Okay. Cool. So, yeah, this is a work in progress. I'm doing 100 different paintings. They're all going to be individualized, and they're going to be no smaller than 5 by 7. Some people are going to luck out and they're going to get a painting that's a little bit bigger. And they're going to be, all different kinds of flowers. They're going to be roses, there'll be peonies, and let's see, what did I paint the other day? Poppies, and yeah, different color flowers. So what I wanted to do is give you a quick demo on what I'm going to do at the end of this painting, and then I'm going to start it over and do another version of this same flower, so you can see like the start to finish from drawing stage to this, and then yeah, so right now I'm going to demonstrate just a quick glaze. So we're going to start out with a little bit of walnut oil. This is walnut oil by Rublev, and I prefer using this for glazes because walnut oil it's slow drying, first of all. This is a gel, so I can put it vertically on my palette and it doesn't like drip down. And then it's a non-yellowing. It yellows the least out of the oils. Technically, linseed oil is a better binder, like it's the least likely to crack, but walnut oil, if you're oiling out or preparing a glaze, you want to make sure that it doesn't yellow over time. So what I'm going to do is use this makeup sponge, and I'm going to go over the surface here, and I'm checking if any of the paint is coming up. I was not using any liquid on this, so there is a chance that some of the paint could be a little bit wet. Yep, it looks like some of that green is wet, but that's okay. My goal for this glaze is to integrate the flower into the background a little bit better. So I'm only oiling out in the areas where I plan to apply the glaze. I kind of want to create a gradation going across the bricks. So I apply with one side of the makeup sponge, and then I'm removing all of the excess. I want the least amount of oil on here as possible. And also, if you have any questions, feel free to comment. I'm going to be using a variety of different brushes from different brands. And let's see, I'm going to start out with this Rosemary & Co. number 6 pointed ivory round. These are fantastic brushes. If you guys are interested in ordering any of the brushes that I use today, I'll be using silver brushes and Rosemary & Co. I have links in the description for discounts. I have affiliate links there, and yeah, I think you get like 10% off, which is pretty cool. Okay, so I'm grabbing a little bit of ivory black, ultramarine blue. I can go over the colors that I have here. I've got Titanium White by Williamsburg, Cad Lemon, Raw Umber. These are Winsor Newton and Old Holland. I love the Old Holland Raw Umber. It's like more on the gold side. And I put it next to my yellow because I consider it like a dark, neutral yellow. Then I've got this really bright pink, which is not a typical color on my palette, but I thought it would be kind of fun. That's by Holbein. I have Transparent Red Oxide, that is by Rembrandt. Then I have Burnt Umber, this is Winsor Newton. Sap Green, Winsor Newton. This one I don't use very often, it's called Olive Green, that's Winsor Newton. I have Ultramarine Blue, and that's French Ultramarine Blue, Winsor Newton. Ivory Black, also Winsor Newton. I use all different kinds of paint brands. This is just what I happen to grab. None of these are student grade. I think that's pretty important. Okay, so I'm going to start by creating a gradation from light to dark on the bricks. And I also want to make the leaves feel like they're casting shadows onto the brick wall a little bit. So notice I'm just going right on top of the leaves. And I can come back in and wipe them out. So that's the benefit of working in multiple layers, is since this is relatively dry, I can just go right on top, and if I don't like something, I can remove it with a makeup sponge or with another brush. Okay. Oh, you know, it would be helpful if I give you guys the reference that I'm looking at. There you go. And you can see how it's, you know, a little bit different than the reference. I took many photographs on my recent trip. I was on both my honeymoon and on a painting trip to teach. So I did 2.5 weeks of honeymoon and 2 weeks of a workshop. I was teaching a workshop with Dan Sprick through Rome Art Residencies. And I plan to do that again. I'm not sure if Dan will be teaching next year, but I will definitely be out in Rome again. So if you're interested in that, you can make sure to follow Rome Art Residencies. Go on their website, etc. Okay, I can see that the paint's kind of coming up there. That's okay. I'm gonna grab a fan brush. So if you're interested in following along to paint, I'd recommend that you get prepared, because I'm going to start this painting over and do a separate one. So if you want to follow along with that, it's maybe just get a 5x7 to 8x10 canvas and get out as similar colors as possible to what I have. You don't need, you know, the pre-mixtures or the exact pigments that I'm using, but it's going to be more or less helpful if you have something similar. But don't let that stop you. If you don't have, you know, sap green or this olive green, I've never heard anyone using that. You don't need that exact color. You can make something comparable. A good go-to for a simple palette is just white, yellow, maybe a cad red, transparent red oxide, burnt umber, ultramarine blue, and you can pretty much get away with that. Okay. I'm going to change the exposure on the camera a little bit so you can see into that glaze a little bit better. So my working process is going from light to dark and then back to front. And I like to use the entire value range, going from white, pretty much out of the tube, not always out of the tube, but maybe white tinted with a particular color, and then go all the way down to ivory black, so I get the maximum value dispersion. I'm going to grab my maul stick. Let's see, Ian, do you have any recommendations for free online photo references? That's a good question. I I'm starting an online atelier, an online art school if you'd like to join. I can only take on about 7 students, and I'm going to be having my own photo reference library on there. So if you're interested in that, you can go to my website, tannersteedart.com. But for the meantime, you know, honestly, I would recommend staying away from using other people's references. I think you're going to be much more motivated to continue working on something that's really hard, as in just the act of painting. Painting's really, really hard, right? So if you take your own pictures and it's coming from your own life experience, you're much more likely to get through the hardship of working on your painting. Now, if you're interested in, you know, painting animals and maybe you don't have a zoo nearby, I could understand why you would, you know, need someone else's pictures for that. But that's a great question. I will be providing some really cool pictures that I got in Rome, of both architectural features and some casts I saw out there. Not only Rome, but I went to London, and whilst there I visited the V&A, the V&A Museum, and gosh, if you get a chance to go to London, you have to check out that museum. It was absolutely spectacular. They had a room full of casts from 19th century casts that are used for art students for the Royal Academy to go there and do copies of these masterworks. So they had copies of Pietà, they had the David, they had Roman columns that, like life-size Roman columns in the museum that you could go and copy. And I had just come from Rome, and honestly, I was in Rome and Florence. Honestly, the copies were just as good. I mean, for learning how to draw. It's obviously a totally different experience seeing the work in person. Which leads to the thought, I think, instead of working from photos, you could work from life as best as you can, and you can order or make your own plaster casts. If you listen to my recent podcast interview with Faso, the Faso podcast, I think I have a link for that in the description too. I talked about when I was just starting out and I couldn't travel to Florence or the art schools that I really wanted to go to. What I did is I looked at their curriculum and tried to copy it. So I bought the bark plate book and I bought my own plaster casts and just did drawings and copies of those, and that was all before I met Dan Sprick, who really helped me tremendously and continues to help me. But yeah, painting from life is very important. And the reason why plaster casts are useful is, they're just white. Don't buy the off-white ones. Just get the simple academic plaster cast, because that way you can help. It can help you just isolate values going from white to black, right? So you can draw from them very easily, or more easily. And then once you start to get into color, you can start to see how much light and reflected light contaminates the white local color of the plaster cast. Okay, so the stem is touching the wall. So here's a little tip. Shadows, when an object is casting a shadow, the further away it is, the more diffused and soft the shadow is going to be. Hence why these shadows out here are kind of, not very specific. They're not like silhouettes of leaves. This is also an overcast day. So on an overcast day, they're generally very, very diffused, very soft. But the closer the object is, like let's say the stem, right here, it's kind of tough to see, but this stem is going to have more of like an occlusion shadow, something that's significantly darker and more precise, as in it'll look like the silhouette of the stem touching. And I'm just using ivory black and that ultramarine blue. On an overcast day, the world is in shadow. So all of the shadows that you're painting in the shadows are very, very diffused, very soft. Those are my favorite days to paint outdoors. I can also maybe add little occlusion shadows at the bottom of some of these bricks. Doesn't take too much. And because I'm painting 100 of these, they're more like oil they're all going to be original oil paintings, but they're going to be more like sketches. As in, after this session, I'm going to be done. And then this is going to be one that someone's going to receive. Maybe you're going to get this one, Ian. Okay. So even when you're glazing, you want to make sure that your paint, you're not adding a ton of oil into the paint. Paint already has oil in it. So use a brush that can thin it out and disperse it more easily. Adding too much oil will lead to a higher likelihood of cracking, particularly if the paint underneath is thick and not dry yet. That's why they say paint thick over thin, but a glaze is, is thin. So in order to reduce the likelihood that it's going to crack, you want it to dry a little bit slower. But by adding more oil, it's much more likely that you're going to have to deal with yellowing. And if there's not enough pigment, oil is like the mortar in between these bricks. And then the bricks are the pigment, right? So if you have too much mortar, then the mortar is just going to crack because there's not a big brick pigment to hold it together. So it's all about this balance. Ideally, you just use the paint out of the tube, but some paints are just, a little bit more stiff and not great feeling for glazing. And I remember when I first started, I didn't know really what glazing was. Like, that word sounded so mysterious. I was like, what? How do you glaze? That was a big question I had for. It's so funny. I roll my eyes at my past self. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I asked Daniel Sprick this question, but I did. It's like, how do you glaze? What is a glaze? How many glazes do you need? Like, stupid questions like that. Sorry, I say stupid, but I had them too, right? They only seem silly that now, because I know, but anyways, glazing is just applying oil paint transparently. That's it. Usually you're thinning it out a little bit. Not with solvent. It's with a little bit of oil. At this stage, I won't use solvent. So again, if you are just joining now, you can go to my website and see if there are any floral paintings for sale, still available. I was trying to fund my honeymoon. I just got married to my muse, my love, Miss Olivia. I've painted her in most of my pictures of figures. The one of Flaming June and Astonishing. If you go to my website and see those, that's her. So yeah, we just got married in Colorado at a freaking castle. It was so cool. Feel very fortunate. And during this stream, I can tell you guys some cool experiences from the trip. But yeah, feel free to ask any other questions. I'm really liking the way this one's looking. I'm not letting anything out the door that I'm not proud of. So I told myself when I started this, I'm like, well, you get a couple hours on each one, because that's going to be a lot of work for, honestly, that is not a lot for a painting. I mean, you can go to my website and compare my normal prices. I'm not going to be able to do this again. This was just a special opportunity to help fund the honeymoon and the wedding. Sweet. I get some questions about my maul stick. I love using maul sticks. This thing is just, I think it was like a curtain rod at some point, and I just put a screw in the end. And that helps balance my hand so I can draw a little bit more precisely. Not a lot of people use them, but once you learn how to use it, which you definitely do need to learn, it feels so strange when you first start. It becomes like an extension of your arm. You're painting with both hands simultaneously, and it's really cool. And I'm also going to be recording this so that we can, you guys can look back at this video, and it'll be available to my online atelier students. Okay, like that. So all of these shadows in between the leaves are going to be nice and soft. And in about 5 minutes, we're going to start a brand new one, and I'll show you how I did the initial stage on this. So if you're watching this after it's been live, then you can fast forward to that. I'll leave a timestamp so you can see it. Okay, like that. Okay, let's start a new one. I think that one's done. What I plan to do is I'm going to sign all of them simultaneously. Just have them all lined up. So let me set that one down and grab. Yes, I just tripped over my dog. Sorry, Watts. Okay, so here's my little 5x7. Take my gloves off. I always wear gloves because I just don't like getting dirty. Okay, so we're going to start out with a little bit of vine charcoal. And I'm going to position the flower, a little bit down and to the left. And I painted this a couple times as an experiment and for the floral sale. And I liked it a lot more with this flower up here. I have one that I made, that I edited. I ended up adding it afterwards. I think it needed that balance. Let me slide this over. Make sure this is in frame. Cool. Okay, so then we're going to have the stem come up this way and leaves something like this. So you can see all of my flower is just this shape. And actually, I'm going to squish it a little bit. I'm looking at just the furthest angles, the apex of that shape. And it's just a silhouette, that white against the dark. So if you're following along, you can be doing this with me. I'm doing the same thing for the general region for where the leaves are. And I'm ignoring all of the internal, here, let me change the thing. Okay, I'm ignoring all the little holes in between the leaves. Okay, the importance of that is to simplify the scene as best you can. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm gonna set the charcoal down, and I'm gonna grab a pencil. Just have a number 2 pencil. So with the sail, it'll be pretty exciting. You'll get the floral painting in the mail, and you won't know which one it is. So it'll be an exciting little package. And you have the option, if you want to order it framed, you absolutely can. Or these, are small enough that you can just set them on a little easel. I think that looks quite nice, actually. The surface that I'm working on is oil primed linen by Centurion. I just get these huge panels off of Jerry's Artorama and cut them down into custom sizes. I've learned to really love this surface. I've worked on, the Raymar panels and Clausen's linen, and all that stuff is, fabulous. And obviously looks, it's so good, but this is just fine. When you're just starting out, maybe you don't want to buy the most expensive stuff, which I think is wise. This stuff works great. It's by no means is it, the cheapest thing that you could buy. I'm not going to the local craft store and buying their cheapest material. I much prefer this. It's still oil primed, it's still linen. I've done some very large pieces on it. If you know my camel painting, that is on the same linen. Just bought a huge roll. Okay. So, again, comment if you have any questions. I just did charcoal and pencil, and this recording is going to be uploaded on my my online art school that's going to be launching in the next month. I'm thinking August. If you're interested in joining early, you absolutely can, but the official launch is going to be in August. Sorry, just get some brushes out. Okay, so this brush, fresh out of the package. Thank you, Silver Brush. This is a Silver Black Pearl. These are, honestly very inexpensive brushes. I love them to block in. This shape is the Filbert. It's the 6403. Really nice brush. When they're just out of the package, they're really hard. So I'm going to open up my solvent, which is out of sight, and just kind of swish it around in there. Break up that glue I think they put in there. There we go. Okay, and so I'm going to work light to dark, then back to front. So, lightest is obviously the flower. And you know what? I'm going to introduce just a little bit of phthalo blue. I'm going to make the lightest lights very, very blue. So I'm grabbing my palette knife. I only need a molecule of this stuff. This is Winton. Phthalo is so potent that I don't think you need to buy you know, the regular phthalo. This is the cheap student grade Winton. It's just fine. Okay, now I'm going to mix my titanium white with a little bit of the blue. And look at that. This is the student grade, and that was barely any. And that is way too blue. And this white that I'm using is my favorite white, titanium white by Williamsburg. And it is a very opaque, it's the most opaque white I've used, which is excellent for alla prima, excellent for blocking in for your first layer. So I'm actually going to get a little bit more out. And I've seen students, if they make a mixture that's too potent in one direction or the other, they may start adding white to this. No. Take white, put it down, grab a little bit of this one. So the majority of this is just white. Okay? And yes, it's still very blue. Holy moly. So when you add a high chroma pigment, or any pigment, to white, it's going to make it darker, right? And with my process, I like to work from white to black, getting the full expression of the value range for full drama. Okay, so, whoops. So I want to make sure that I'm tinting this blue, but it needs to be as light as I can possibly make it. Okay? Remove some of this, just move it down. So in the online school, what we do is we meet up once a week. What we're going to do, right, hasn't launched yet, unless you want to join early. We meet up once a week where you follow along with a lesson like this, and you can also access all of the recordings from previous classes, as well as all of my fundamentals videos. And then once a month, we meet up for a one-on-one coaching session. And during that, you can tell me, you know, what your personalized goals are, and you can send me your artwork, and I can paint directly on your artwork using Procreate, which is such a cool feature. Procreate is just an app on the iPad, if you haven't heard of it. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm creating a gradation from light to dark. If you look at that flower, it's lightest at the top right, and it's slowly gradating, going a little bit darker, and there are some hue changes. So right now, I'm focused on the center of the flower. The center of the flower appears to be a little bit warmer and a little bit darker. So I'm going to grab some raw umber, some of this pink. If you don't have pink, you can use a molecule of cad red. And then I've got a little bit of this yellow. Light to dark. I also want to keep this more of a hue change and less of a value change. I do want it going light to dark, different colors, but more so higher, more difference in the color change. Yeah. More pink. Okay, I'm going to set that down here. So I've got my blue, I have my pink, and now as we move further down the flower, what's going to happen? The flower is going more into shadow, and shadows are mirrors, okay? So whatever direction that plane is facing, that it will start to pick up on that color, okay? The upper part of the flower is facing up, which is facing the sky. What color is the sky? It's blue. The local color of the flower is pale white, a little bit pink, so it's mostly blue the more it faces the sky. As it moves away from the sky and faces forward, it's not really getting a ton of reflected light. It's actually me, in front of it. So I would consider that more of the local color of the flower. And then as we move down further, it's going to be facing the green leaves. So I'm going to grab a little bit of this blue, and a molecule of sap green. Okay, and maybe even a little bit of the pink. So this is going to be the greenest version of these three colors. Comment if you have any questions about that. Okay, and we can also make adjustments if we're like, hey, this is way weird. Oh, I should also point out that these mixtures are the petals. They are not the inside of the flower, that deep dark. We will get to that in a second. Okay, and I'm thinking that this actually might be a little too blue still. So I'm going to set it aside. I'm going to grab maybe just a little bit. I'm going to add a little more white. Okay, now for the fun part. We're going to block in just the flower. We're working light to dark, back to front. So lightest is the flower. I'm going to open up my solvent can. I only use solvent in the very first stage. And when I'm using it, I open the can with one hand, dip my brush in, and then I close it again because I don't want too much exposure to that. I work out of a studio in Denver that's much bigger. This one is just my little, extra bedroom home studio, and so it's quite small. And so I've got a filter going. The window will be cracked later. Really should be cracked now, but it's a little loud outside. But yeah, I'm filming. I'm sacrificing for you guys. But you don't want to breathe in the solvent. That is not good. Okay, top of the flower is going to have thin blue. Jeez, that is blue. Okay, wipe that. I'm gonna grab the pink. I'm gonna place that in the center. The green looks quite muted on the screen. Let's see, green looks quite muted on the screen. Is it more neutral than green? It is, relative to this, it is the greenest thing happening. But the lightest notes are going to be more chromatic, and then as we descend into darkness, we're going to get more and more neutral. So when I put that up here, it's going to look green relative to the rest of the flower, but it is not going to be anywhere near as green as the leaves surrounding it. That's really important. Because if you think the blue sky, the cloudy sky actually, is bouncing off of the leaves, and it's, not a very powerful light source. So it's bouncing off the leaves and influencing it a little bit. If it were direct, yellow, intense sunlight, then the white of the flower would be significantly more green. It's a good observation. Okay, so notice I just laid in that pink and I did a little zigzag. Okay, now I'm going to lay this one down. I'm going to do a little zigzag. So I'm creating a gradation of value and hue. I'm going to go through this a couple times. Look how I'm stroking through that gradation. Wiggle up here a little bit. Stroke through. You can see, because all of this is white, it is darker than white out of the tube. Everything on the flower is. So this is thin. You can, play around with the consistency, whether it be more like watercolor. This is a little bit thicker than watercolor. It's definitely not dripping, but it's not super thick paint. Nowhere near a Van Gogh chunky, chunky chunk. Okay, grab this fan brush. Just kind of smooth that out. The fan brush is also picking up a little bit of extra paint, which is good. And when I'm doing this, I'm going over the pencil lines. I want to paint on top of that. Okay, now I'm going to clean this brush using my solvent. Okay, now I'm going to mix up two colors, one for the greenery, for the leaves, and then one for the bricks. Let's do the greenery first. I'm going to grab sap green, olive green, blue, black, and let's do a little bit, just a little bit of white. Yeah. By adding a little bit of white, it'll prevent us going all the way down to black, and really black out of the tube is as dark as we can get. I want this to lean more on the earthy blue-green side. Just like the reference, that is not a candy-coated green. It's very, very earthy. And when I add white and blue, they're going to be, a little bit lighter. So think of this as kind of like the shadows, the darkest parts of the leaves. Okay, and I will be painting this much more transparently than the flower to make sure. So as you paint transparently, it's going to be lighter than it would if you painted it opaquely, because we're working on a white canvas. In the like a classical atelier, you may stain the canvas to be one color or the other. I am not doing that to maximize the glow internally from the paint. The white surface is going to reflect much more easily with transparent colors, and actually end up being brighter than if it was a raw umber. Because oil paint over time becomes more transparent. So if you've got brown or a neutral gray, then that isn't going to reflect quite as much, right, as white. So your paintings over time are going to get darker and darker and darker. Okay, so now we're going to do the bricks, and I'm actually going to take a little bit of this green white. I'm noticing at the top right of the bricks, it feels more or less kind of purpley, right? So I'm going to use a little bit of my, only because I have leftover petal mixtures, grabbing a little bit of my pink, a little bit of my green, and then we'll do a touch of raw umber, and maybe a little bit of this blue. The goal here is to make a purpley mixture that is a step down darker from the rose, okay? And many options will work, okay? I've painted this flower a couple times, and it's fun, you know, painting on this scale, being able to experiment with all different kinds of backgrounds, different color harmonies. You can change all of your pigments and paint it all again. It's really, really exciting. So I need to make sure that this is just darker than the flower itself, because when we squint, right, we squint to read value. If you squint at the flower, it is lighter than the leaves and it's lighter than the bricks. When you unsquint a little bit, you can see that the leaves are darker than the bricks. And if you watched, you know, the beginning of this video, you saw that I glazed the bottom left corner, which I will likely do with this one too, because I just like that effect. And you could do it alla prima, but you know, I think it's more efficient to and a better outcome if you do it in 2 layers. For me, just for this. Okay, so we'll do that. I've got a clean brush, relatively. It's a little contaminated by that phthalo blue, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So remember, my process is light to dark, back to front, right? So I'm going to take my solvent, put the lid back on. We're going to thin this out. And, oh, you know what I just realized? Is I didn't paint that little flower up top. So I'm actually going to pause, grab a different clean brush. This is a Rosemary & Co. Pure Sable, Series 81. It's pretty old. It's kind of in rough shape. I'm going to need to order a new one. If you guys are in the mood to order new brushes, you can go to Rosemary & Co.'s website and use my affiliate link. During checkout, it asks if you have an affiliate code. It's just Tanner Steed Art. I love sable brushes. Excellent for florals, for portraits. So I'm doing the same gradation on this guy. Painting it thin enough so I can see through to the pencil underneath. And if you guys have any questions, happy to help. See some new people have joined. Introduce yourself, tell me where you're watching from. Let me know if you're one of the lucky few who scored one of the floral paintings. Okay, now I'm gonna go back to my bricks. You can see that it's kind of dripping on the palette a little bit, so I'll show you how thin it is. Okay, I'm just laying that down as a test. What I'm looking for is it darker than the flower? Absolutely is. And I think we could go, yeah, actually I think it's pretty good. This one's going to be a little bit different. If you are working in multiple layers, I always will encourage you to go lighter in your first layer, because if you plan to glaze or scumble on top, it's likely, well, anytime you glaze, you are making your painting darker. So if your first layer, if you want to maximize that value range, keep it light. Compress for the lights. This is almost just as bright as that flower up there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to act as if this blue mixture is a halftone value. Halftone being the value in between light and shadow, right before you reach the core shadow. If that is a new concept to you, if you've never heard of halftones or core shadows or anything like that, in my online atelier, which I will only have room for 7 students, I have pre-recorded fundamentals lessons going over all the component parts of light and shadow on a sphere, on a cylinder, and I prove to you that if you can figure out the sphere, cubes, cylinders, linear perspective, no, it's awesome, then you can paint anything. So this is much lighter than the previous rows. If you go to the beginning of the video, you can see that it's much lighter. Lift these off, scrub underneath. This is so similar to my plein air setup actually, by using these clamps. Yeah, if you want to see what the end product of this is going to be, it's going to be more or less like the beginning of this video, if you rewind. Okay. So now to get a bit of a brick rocky texture, I'm going to take a fan brush and kind of screw this up a little bit. You know, what the heck? Why don't we try to do that gradation? Just a little bit of a gradation. So I grabbed a little black, a little brown, maybe a little raw umber. And if we think this is in shadow, right? So it's going to be darker, and it's going to be just a little more green. So I can grab maybe a little blue. I'm just stabbing. Okay, this is the bricks, not the mortar. We will add the mortar on top of this. Okay, so now there's a subtle gradation going from light to dark, from top right to bottom. Just the natural drop off of light, and these are being, that part of the bricks are occluded by the leaves. Okay, now I'm going to get into my leaf mixture. And I'm definitely going to add some solvent. Let me know if you want me to go over anything again. Moving quick. Okay, so my initial drawing with the flower was, very much generalized, like a kind of a hexagon, maybe a few more facets than that, a few more sides. So what I'm going to do is articulate the drawing a little bit more than what I did before. So you're constantly drawing, and I'm just going to start at a place where I'm familiar and make just one straight line and break it up into maybe 2 or 3, not randomly, but based off observation. Okay, see a little petal there. And the cool thing about flowers is you can really, you can invent them. We do have the likelihood to do the exact same pattern over and over and over again. So be aware. Get more solvent. Sometimes I'll take my hand holding the brush and lift the lid of the solvent off. Right, because we do not want to be inhaling that long term. I plan to paint for the rest of my life, and I don't want to go mad. Okay, if I see a leaf, I will generalize it by starting at the back of the leaf and then flick out to do the edge of it. I'm keeping the edges of these leaves very sharp for the most part. Maybe that one isn't, but for the external silhouette, it's going to be more or less sharp. Now, it is very important that you cover up all of the white. You don't want to leave anything in between. So notice when I'm making these brush strokes, I'm going over the rose drawing or going into the brick. Your leaves don't have to be exactly like the leaf in the photo. In fact, they shouldn't. The point of this is not to recreate the photo, it's to design an elegant picture. Otherwise, why not just print out the photo? Right? We're making artistic changes to make art work. When you're first starting out, don't worry about that. Don't worry about composition. Just try to recreate what's going on in front of you. And then once you understand that, then you can start making stuff up. That's when you make art. Okay. It's very important to me compositionally to have leaves exiting the sides of the canvas, so that the scene feels like a crop from something much more. It's just a component part in a larger world. You can see now with these dark leaves silhouetting the flower, just how bright that flower can be. That flower feels. At first it was the darkest thing on the surface or on the canvas, and that can be really confusing. A lot of people like working on the gray tone or raw umber tone so that they can read their values a little bit better. My solution for that is this gray background and just, practicing a lot. So I'm still using that filbert. This is the Black Pearl 6403 number 6 by Silver. If you want to get this brush, I have a discount code in the description for all silver brushes. And rosemary. Okay, I'm going to step back. And in the back of the studio I have a mirror. I'm always checking the mirror, seeing how it's coming along. Gives me a more objective perspective. You can let me know if you have any questions. Stem. here. Like that. Okay, so now I'm going to take a smaller brush. This is a very worn out Michael Klein round by Rosemary. I couldn't tell you the size because it's completely wiped off. I'm going to grab my brick mixture and fill in the cracks a little bit. Created a gradation, right? So I'm going to scumble this in. Maybe even tap it. But I want to cover up all of that white. Oh, and I just sent out a newsletter, so some exciting things on there. Boop. There we go. How are you keeping the brick color from contaminating your dark leaves? That's a great question. So the brick color is lighter and thinner, and the leaves are just a little bit thicker. It is also really important in my left hand. This is essential. That's a great question. In my left hand I have a paper towel, and after every single brush stroke I'm wiping my brush because it very likely is contaminated by a little bit of the brick. If you find that you've contaminated an area too much and your darks aren't looking very dark, you can either paint thicker with the darks, or you can come in with a Q-tip, a paper towel, kind of wipe out the general silhouette of that leaf cluster. And there's also the way that you're releasing the paint. There's a dexterity that you will absolutely develop where you'll know if you're putting it on top of the paint or if you're scrubbing in. If you find that you're scrubbing in and it's contaminating, it's likely you need more paint on your brush. And then, like right here, I'm going to take the brick color and go on top of the leaf color. Okay? I'm going to push it firmly and then pull straight back to release. By doing that, it leaves a thick brush stroke and it doesn't scrub it in. Now with that, I didn't wipe the brush. I had a little bit of green contaminated in here, and that's okay for that area. I just scrubbed it into my paint. And I'm painting the sharp little spots in between the leaves. And I'm using the appropriate value in the gradation that I've created here on the palette. And bricks can have, a little fluctuation. Doesn't have to be exactly the same color, exactly the same value, and it has to be pretty close. Has to be pretty close. The color can change. It's also important that your brush is snappy. What I mean by that is it releases the paint and doesn't scrub in. So look at your brush, see if it's a soft bristle. If it's softer, you're going to have a much easier time releasing the paint. That was a great question. Scrub that in. Okay, light to dark, back to front. Now I'm going to go on the inside of both of the flowers. Actually, I need to be a good example and make sure all of these white notes are completed. Okay, that's on the right. you can take a paper towel and remove paint to make it lighter. So if I want the top right of my bricks to be the lightest, I can remove that. It's looking pretty cool. Someone's gonna own this from the sale. Okay. Okay, so now I'm gonna go in the center of this flower. So you've noticed probably that I've been mixing with my palette knife. I will also mix smaller quantities with just my brush. The center of the flowers is going to always be darker and I find generally warmer. And the reason why that is the case is the flower is being lit by some light source, and a lot of that light is getting trapped in there, and there's subsurface scattering, bouncing around. So anytime you have like a pinch or a fold in the flower, it's going to be darker and warmer. In this case, it's going to be one of two versions. It's going to be yellow, or it's going to be a little bit pink. And I know you can look at the flower and say, obviously, I can see the yellow and pink. So, maybe obviously, I don't know. So I'm grabbing some raw umber, which I consider my neutral yellow. And I also like to place it on my palette where it's going to exist on my painting. So I'm putting it next to the, let me change the exposure. That was good. Maybe that's too dark. Okay, so I'm placing the center mixture of the flower right next to the pink here. So I'm grabbing some raw umber, which is neutral yellow, and we also have pink. I'm going to grab a little bit of this brilliant pink. You can use like a cad red for that. Any warm pinkish color is going to be great. So when I squint at these, they are darker than the petals next to it. That's the most important. Okay, I'm spinning my brush to get a point. And the way I do this is I go in the center and I'm going to make like little sharp dots, and then I'm going to soften. Okay, because I've created this gradation. So I'm squinting down, I'm going to locate where this pink stroke is. Right there. Okay, I'm going to go into the raw umber. I'm going to go right in the middle. I'm painting around the petals. I just saw an email come through. Someone's asking about the online atelier. Fantastic. I will respond to that after the demo. So these are all little occlusion shadows. Occlusion shadows are shadows that are pinches and folds. They're where shadows are occluded, right? Or the light is 100% occluded. That's what I meant. Notice that I am only able to get a single brush stroke out of each of these. It's a dot, and then I'm getting more. If your first layer is too thick, and you're finding that these strokes are just not mixing well, you're going to have to use more paint, or you can take a paper towel and just kind of dab at the first, that first layer, remove some of the paint, and then you can try again. You may have to smooth out the gradation once more, but that's okay. So I'm just picking, is it either more red or is it more yellow? More red, more yellow. And I know flowers are tricky. Hi there, Mr. Fran 1972. Let me know if you have any questions. What I'm saying is, flowers are very tricky. You very easily get lost in them, right? So find one petal, could be maybe the silhouette, could be right in the middle, and just say, okay, I know where that one is. Then start crawling your way out of that, and my eyes are constantly flicking back and forth between flower, painting, and you're making these tiny little comparisons, and it's a memory game, truly. You're trying to remember and memorize the positioning of that. This is a fabulous way to train yourself to get better at proportions, and this can absolutely benefit your portrait work. Just look into Fantin Latour and all the things that he said about floral painting and what people said about Fantin Latour. Speaking of him, I got to see several of his pieces while I was in London. Let's see, it was at the V&A. I saw a couple. And maybe the Tate had one? Definitely saw Waterhouse. Yes, absolutely. So, my palette is Zoll oil paint, right? I have titanium white, cad lemon, raw umber, brilliant pink, transparent red oxide, burnt umber, sap green, olive green, ultramarine blue, ivory black. These are all the paints out of the tube. These are my pre-mixtures. And they vary in brands. Williamsburg, Old Holland raw umber, and I think the rest are all Winsor and Newton. Oh, except for that brilliant pink, which is not usually on my palette. It's a Holbein color. So what's cool about the online atelier is all of the classes are scheduled so that if you are in Italy, if you are in somewhere in the US, everyone can make the class. You may be, meeting up in the evenings if you're in Europe, or if you're in the US, it'll be in the mornings, but you'll start to make some international friendships, and very excited. Grab more raw umber. And you may be thinking, oh my gosh, how is this going to turn into that flower? My pleasure. Let me know if you have any other questions. Okay, so I'm adding a little bit of cad lemon because I'm noticing a higher concentration of a higher chroma mixture kind of in the center. But by adding that yellow, it's going to lighten it, right? So, gotta be aware. Okay, we're going to keep that right there. Actually, I'm going to grab this raw umber yellow, and we won't neglect the center of this flower. And this is just a little sphere. Everything boils down to just spheres, cones, cubes, and linear perspective. It's all just the fundamentals. That's a little sphere. I'm just adding the building blocks. This is what I'm doing is I'm putting clay on the surface. I'm putting a bunch of paint up here to then manipulate further to soften edges and activate the form. Getting clay on the wheel, as they say. Okay, question, do you find Holbein to be a good brand? I live in Japan and many art stores only have Holbein products. I use very few Holbein products, but every time I use them, I quite like them. Yeah, it's a good product. I wouldn't say I avoid them by any means. I just don't tend to grab those. Yeah, they're pretty good. What is most important is that you try to stick with linseed oil and that you keep track of the individual pigments that the brand is introducing. You don't want to work with certain pigments like zinc for risk of cracking. But that is far more important than the individual paint brand. Okay, I like that. That looks pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean my brush. Sorry, I just pulled on my mic. Can you guys confirm you can still hear me? Just comment, yes, I can still hear you. Okay, so now I'm going to grab, oh, I need more white paint. Now for my whites, I always get titanium white, no zinc, and this one's very, very opaque, Williamsburg. I love it. And I can squirt out these, huge piles of paint, but I prefer to have too much paint left over than to be, skimping and not have enough to paint with, And I paint all day, every day, so I know I'm going to use this stuff. If you are worried about wasting paint and you want to preserve it, maybe you don't paint every day, you can take your paints and put them in the in a spare refrigerator. You can get a mini fridge just to hold your art supplies. That's something I've done. And this is plexiglass that I'm working on, just clamped up to a gray board, so it's transparent. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm making a lighter version of this phthalo blue, and I'm going to put in the lightest notes. I said before that this is now my halftone, okay, and I'm going to go lighter and thicker, creating impastos, which creates glare, right? And start describing the upward facing planes. You can see if I put a horizontal brushstroke, that is going to create a lot more glare to benefit me, to make it feel brighter than everything around it. If your paint isn't bright enough, you can paint it thicker. Thick brushstroke in isolated points can create a luminosity that thin paint cannot. But if it's thick everywhere, sorry Van Gogh, if it's thick everywhere, you totally lose that effect. You create something different, but you can't benefit from that. So I'm all about maximizing the potential of the value range, light to dark. That is number one for me. So I'm looking around the silhouette, noticing points of highlights, and the highlights are glare from the light source, and the light source I have decided, it's a decision I'm making, is phthalo blue. Right, I could have selected yellow or pink or purple or whatever, but I chose phthalo blue. So it's based on observation. It's a cool light source. Okay, this note right here, this petal is a little bit brighter. Just going to lay that down to manipulate later. These are facing upward a little bit more than the others, which is why they're brighter. When I start to scrub, it's going to mix into the paint underneath, contaminating the mixture and darkening it ever so slightly. So, like I said before, I'm still setting up for the manipulation stage where I'm going to fine-tune the gradations. That's essentially what I'm creating. It's just a series of gradations. Notice that most of these strokes are going in the same direction, and that's because I'm painting the exact same plane in all of these spots. They're upward facing. So every time, in one of my fundamentals lesson for the Atelier class, we discuss direction of light and how that affects every object that you're painting. And even if you can't see it, if you're painting from a photograph, you may not immediately be able to detect where the light source is coming from. But I train you so that you can look at anything and know exactly where the light source is. And then when you get good at that, you can just make it up and say, oh, what if the light is coming from the right? Or from the bottom? And then you can get better at drawing and painting from imagination. Okay, I'm also going to take this, go up here. Paint with my brush has a little bit of blue on it, so when I mix it into the titanium white, it's contaminating the white a little bit, so it is still not pure white. It's white with a molecule of phthalo blue. Okay, now I can come down here, grab a little bit of this white, and mix it into the green. Like that. Okay, I'm going to back up for a moment. Cool. Okay, so now I'm going to clean my brush and start working on these gradations a bit more. So I cleaned my brush because I was working with white, and now I'm going back into the darks. So if you have trouble with contamination, it may be wise to use a different brush for each mixture. So, as the petal recedes into the center of the flower, it's going to have a soft edge. On the very edge of the flower petal, as it rests on top of the one next to it, it will have a sharp edge. So it's just a series of soft gradations and then sharp edges on each one. So we'll just start with the middle. And just like the gradation I did at the very beginning, with the blue, pink, and green, I'm just going to do that little wiggle. If it's more like a cylinder, it's going to have a soft edge. And this isn't always just a one and done gradation and then you're done. We may have to apply more paint. Now if you find that I want this to be very, very subtle, right? When you squint at the flower, all of the tiny little holes in between petals, most of them disappear, which tells me that the value change between the two petals is actually minute. It's not dramatic at all. So we don't want to exaggerate the difference between each one of these petals. If you do that, it's going to feel very cartoony. Not very realistic. I can actually also go to the outside of these petals and bump into the green. The green is going to be influencing some of these shadows. So I can directly pull from the green and maybe with a little bit of brown to start carving out the shapes of the petals. And again, I am happy to answer any questions you have. Could be about this. Could be about something else. I was talking about Fantin Latour earlier. Fantin Latour was one of the most magnificent floral painters. And he had a way with painting so simply. You get close to the petals and it's just like a very intentional loaded brushstroke. So it's this whole gradation in just like one brushstroke with what appears to be petals, but they're not. It's like the ridges in the paint. It's so cool. I'd like to do a video for my atelier class where I do a master copy of one of those, because this technique is definitely different than what Fantin Latour was doing. One of the best ways to learn how a painter did what they did is to do master copies. I've done many, many, many master copies, and I'll probably do more. One fun thing, I'm sure you guys know Stephen Bauman. We met up while in Rome, and I got to see his new house and new filming setup. That was so cool, very inspiring. It's like, when I get home, I'm gonna fulfill my dreams of building my online art school. This is something I've been thinking about for quite some time because Olivia and I plan to move to Europe. And I want to be able to stay supporting all of my local students here. Let's see. Ian, you said, would you consider Latour's approach more indirect? Is that why it differs from this process? I would say indirect means multiple layers. Direct means alla prima, all at once. It's hard to say. I think they give the illusion that they are more alla prima because of these, fancy brushstrokes, but I absolutely see evidence of him glazing. So technically, they are indirect. But when he's actively painting, I think he paints in as direct of an approach as he can. He was around the time of Monet. He was friends with Monet and Degas and, Sargent, and so direct painting was extremely popular. He's one of the very few Impressionists that really impressed me. I would consider him, I don't know. Someone look that up. Is Latour an Impressionist? He's always hung with the Impressionists. You get close to them and they're brushstrokes, and the piece just it disintegrates into brushstrokes, but they hold together and they're so fabulously realistic. They feel so real. Whereas Monet, I would not say they feel real. They feel like his own world. Van Gogh, not realistic at all. Very stylized. They're beautiful for his own style, his own vision. And Fantin Latour has his own vision, and it just happens to be much more naturalistic. It has to do with the palette. The application is very loose, but his palette is much more reserved and classical, I'd say. He had a lot of transparent, washy backgrounds. That's kind of coming back into style. You can see contemporary painters like Alex Venezia and Michael Klein doing that washy background. My friend Tina Figarelli. A lot of people really like that. There's something so beautiful about using all of the types of paint of oil. Transparent, thick, thin, scraped. It's cool. So as I'm working on each one of these petals, not pillows, I'm switching between their local zone. Okay, is it in the green zone? I'm grabbing my green petal color. Is it in the blue zone? Does it need to be lighter, darker? And I can actually start to build up the paint. I love drawings. I love the linear aspect of like a Prud'hon drawing. Prudon. Prud'hon. I think I missed an H in there, but look him up. So when I'm painting, I will often articulate these little brush strokes that give a linear aspect to a directionality to the growth pattern of a petal, and it has a reflective quality. It's really cool. So it's slightly thicker. Okay, like that. I'm gonna go back into my darks. That was a good question, Ian. Keep them coming, otherwise I'm gonna start telling crazy stories, which will be fun too. Actually, I'll just tell you one right now. So, while Olivia and I were in London, get this, you're not going to believe this. We got access to Windsor Castle and got to go to their private print room. Just Olivia, myself, and the curator. And had access to the original drawings by Leonardo da Vinci, Rubens, Holbein, Raphael, Bernini, and so many more. We had 3.5 hours of time studying the artwork. I am so grateful for my friend Timothy for helping make that happen. It was absolutely a life-changing experience. Leonardo da Vinci is one of my absolute favorite artists. I love his mind and who he was and what he wanted to get out of his life. It was one of the coolest things ever. I saw the anatomical studies, the studies for the Battle of Anghiari. It was so unbelievable. Okay, so stepping back, and I need to soften some of these edges a little bit more. Yeah, I've read as many books as I possibly can on Leonardo. And I have the Princeton University print of his treatise on oil painting. See, right before as he was aging, one of his many, many projects was to create a book on everything that he knew about painting. And he was going to title it and publish it, his Treatise on Painting. Well, that's where all the anatomical studies came from. He drew these things out, took copious notes, and had it almost ready to go. He hadn't quite finished it, but on his deathbed, or right before he passed, he had given it to one of his students, right, to publish. And that person was unable to fulfill that, unfortunately, and so it was passed down to someone else and to someone else, and eventually, unfortunately, a third of it was lost, and it was, hundreds of years of science was held back by the fact that that thing was not published. He knew so much, and he wanted to share it. There's this strange narrative online right now where people say that Leonardo wanted to keep all of his notes a secret, and so he wrote backwards, right? When I was looking at these, I even asked the curator about this, and because everything is, right to left in Italian. Well, no, that wasn't true at all. He was left-handed and didn't want to smudge the ink, and he was planning on publishing this to give to the public, or for the science community. Scientific method was not invented at that point in time. But to his community. He by no means wanted to keep all of that a secret. It's a very strange thing, viral thing. If that's what you do at night, is look up videos on Leonardo da Vinci. It's like, okay, I'm not painting anymore. What do you want to do? Well, we could look at art books. We could look at art documentaries. Some of my favorite YouTube channels, there's one called Gamel Lack Institute. Oh my gosh. the guy's voice is so calming. Some people may find it more monotone, and dude, it is so nice. I've listened to every video multiple times, and I continue to. It will support your artistic education significantly. There's so much available to us. So maybe tonight, instead of scrolling on Facebook, scrolling on whatever you do, TikTok, whatever, go look at those videos. You can look up Fantin Latour, if you hadn't heard of him, on Gamelak Institute. Soft paws unite. Nice. Leonardo drew with his left hand and painted with his right hand. A bit of an ambidextrous guy. Have you, let's see, Rob, have you read the Walter Isaacson book on Leonardo? That's a really, really good book. Let's see. Also ran into Cesar Santos in Florence. That was funny. I've ran into him twice. He caught me painting. I was in like the center of town painting the what sculpture is that? Not the Medusa one, the one right next to it. I'm having a brain fart. But I was doing a nocturne, and him and his wife walked up, and they're like, "Hey, I knew you'd be painting." He saw that I was there. Okay, let me back up for a second. Okay. Getting there. I haven't read it. You saw a video about him on YouTube. Oh, cool. Very nice. So if you're just getting in, this is going to be for my 100 flowers sale. So the first flower available was $1, and the last one is $100. That's it. I'm very unlikely that I'm going to do another sale like this again, but this was to help fund my honeymoon, which I just got back from. It was a fabulous, fabulous experience. We went to Florence, Rome, and London. And I had been to Florence and Rome before, obviously. Some of the coolest places on the planet, right? London was new, and we loved it. It was so, so cool. The museums there are all free, and we went to, I think, 25 different museums over the course of the whole trip. Spectacular. Spectacular. Congratulations, Tanner. Thank you. Thank you so much. I love the Gamelak Institute channel too. I discovered them. Oh yeah. Oh man, that channel is so good. And they have, so they started doing ebooks with artist work. So if you want to go support them, go get one of their ebooks. I don't think they're that expensive. Still using the little Michael Klein round. These are available on Rosemary & Co.'s website. I have a discount code with them for Tanner Steed Art at checkout. Okay, let me back up. Sorry, once. Okay, I'm gonna go a little bit darker now. Burnt umber right in the center. Grab some of the brick, come around. I'm thinking I definitely could have gone darker with the brick, which is okay because I can let that dry and then blaze it darker. I think that'll be the easiest and most consistent, because I also wanted to create that gradation like I did in the other one. In Florence, I ran into Eric Rhodes in the Zecchi shop, their art store there, and that was funny. He invited me to go check out the Florence Academy because he was there for, I think, a 6-week long workshop or something. And so we went there, he took me around, did an unofficial tour because I had never been there. Remember, when I first started, I was like, so jealous of everyone who went to the Angel Academy and Florence Academy. That's all I wanted to do, and that's how I based my own curriculum off of when I was trying to teach myself. I did that stuff. So it was really, really cool to go meet some of the students, a lot of cool people. And then I ran into a new friend right when we got off the plane. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Rob. Right when we got off the plane, Olivia and I went out into the streets, and within literally 5 minutes of exiting our spot, we ran into a group of plein air painters who were in a workshop. And so I asked who the teacher was, and I walk up to this guy, and I'm like, dang, this guy's pretty good. His name is Rolf, and we are now best friends. Now, maybe we'll get there. But yeah, now we're good friends. We ended up painting together that week. I kind of just joined in, hanging out at the workshop. And then we went to Cecil Studios for a figure drawing session, which was really fun. And they also had an art history night, which was so cool. If you guys don't follow me already, go to Instagram or Facebook, and you can type in Tanner Steed Art there. I posted some videos of me painting on location. You can see the fountain there. One of my upcoming videos, I want to teach you guys in the atelier how to take a plein air painting and keep working on it at home using glazes, etc. Surely you're not self-taught, Tanner. I'm trying to teach myself, but it's difficult. No. I by no means am I self-taught. No. I was trying to teach myself at first using YouTube and just videos, but the one thing I really lacked was a direct instructor to look at my work, tell me what I was doing wrong, and take it further. And until that, like I grew pretty quickly, but then I kind of stagnated because I couldn't see what I couldn't see. So what I did is I took all of my work and met up with, it took months and multiple emails to end up getting in contact with one of my favorite artists, Daniel Sprick. He saw my work, saw how serious I was, and took me under his wing, and he's changed my life. The majority of what I know is from him, and then I've also taken workshops with many, many artists. I now work out of Kwang Ho's studio in Denver, which is such a cool opportunity. I'm not there right now, obviously. This is my home film studio. I work there with a small group, and we teach in-person classes there. That's Ben Walling, Christian Mora, and Lily Curley. My buddy, just a second. Sorry, it's hard to talk and paint, isn't it? I'm so much more efficient. I'd probably be done by now, but this is fun. I like this. What was I saying? Oh, my friend Diego Glazer, he also shared the studio with us. Was it last year or the year before? He was there for a couple of years. Now he's at the Seattle Art Prize. So I've learned from Diego. I've learned from Daniel Sprick, Kwang Ho, Adrian Stein, Robin Cole. These are all wonderful people, locals, friends. Very, very, very fortunate to have all of these wonderful friendships. I've also taken workshops with Jeff Hine and Tim Reese. Those were really cool. Yeah, if you you may follow. We have like a figure drawing group where we meet up once a week and sketch the model, paint the model. And in that group, there's a lot of really, really competent artists in all different styles. One is really cool you should look into is Paul Heaston. He, totally different style of artist. He will draw the entire room. Whoops, I just threw my brush. He'll draw the entire room with all of us painting and the model. It's so, so impressive. So this flower is going to be available on my website, but you're not going to be able to pick out which one you get. It'll be a surprise. When you open that box, it'll be super exciting. You may have this one that I'm painting on right now, or one of the other 100 that I did. Let's see, I don't know how many I've done. My trick for this is I am just painting as many as I possibly can and not counting, so I don't freak out with the number 100. Because that's a lot of paintings. Okay, I'm going to step back, look in the mirror, looking pretty good. A weird glare on this one. So the key is just to keep this in a compressed range. And when I glaze it, it'll have to be in a couple days because I'm not using any dryers. I I'll make this stand out a little bit more. There are some ways that I can do that now, one of which would be putting in deep darks underneath the flower here. And I haven't gone all the way down to black too. So if I wanted to make a mark that's pure black, it's actually not pure black because my brush is contaminated a little bit. I can take this and place it here, just in a couple spots. This is like the deepest, darkest shadows where the flower is casting a shadow on a dark leaf. And I'm considering all of these leaves to be the halftone. So I'm going to go lighter from that. Like that. Pretty good. I'm going to change the exposure on this. Sorry, I bumped the camera. Okay, so with these leaves, going dark first. Crisp edges. Notice I think I only used like 2 or 3 brushes on this. When I've tried painting, sorry, there's a weird emoji that keeps popping up. I have to read it on a different screen. When I've tried painting, I work indirectly because I can't control the paint alla prima. Yeah, that just takes practice. Painting wet into wet, just keep doing the push-ups, keep practicing, doing multiple paintings alla prima. But also don't beat yourself up over it because it is hard. You gotta learn like the consistency of the paint and how to load your brush thicker and thicker. And inevitably, when you have enough brush miles, you just get used to understanding how paint behaves, and then you will treasure painting wet into wet. It's so nice. Okay, so now I'm going to take some of this phthalo blue, that leftover mixture that was way too chromatic. I'm going to introduce it into the green here. Let's see. Can't really see that. I've gone a little too low for the camera, so let me move it up here a little bit. Go. And what color is our light source? Our light source is blue, phthalo blue specifically. So I'm going to paint into the wet paint alla prima, mixing it in, which is going to contaminate the green. The more I stir up the paint, scrub it in, the more it's going to dilute and enter and get darker. Okay? If I just lay down a brush stroke like that, it's going to stay light. So I can now render the form going lighter with more paint or scrubbing to make it darker, and it'll stay within that value range. When I squint, it's really important that I don't make it so light that it becomes a light shape and competes with the rose. So I'm going to scrub. I can also mix it into the wet paint on the palette. And this represents the reflection, right, of the sky. And these leaves are usually folded like a cup shape, right? So I like to paint one side maybe a little lighter, a little bit more blue. It's all about gradations. And I'm not done with that rose, but I'm just pausing on it for a moment. Just to give you guys another skill. And if you're following along, you can do that too. 3 to 4 step for Z painting. Colors more vivid. Are you speaking in terms of painting indirectly? That's what you're talking about. Yeah. Yes, Fran, it's difficult. Artists like Tanner makes it look easy. It just takes practice. And I'm sorry to be that guy to say that, because of course you know. Just keep trying. I used to be terrified of having to paint alla prima. But as Kwong would say, is don't let your fears dictate what you do and what you don't do. In fact, when I first started painting flowers, I was like, that looks terrifying. So I was like, I should probably learn how to paint that. So the majority of my brushes are very, very soft. Another brush, other than this Michael Klein, that you could try out, there's a series, the Renaissance series from Silverbrush. Those are awesome. Those are so good. Every shape and size. They're so soft. Those you have to take care of them though. You will shred them if you scrub too intensely because they are so soft. But they're fabulous brushes for painting flowers, painting portraits, painting whatever. So to help with alla prima, I would use more bristly brushes at the beginning to get a bunch of paint on there, and then really, really soft brushes to subtly manipulate the paint that's already on the surface. Also, if you're ordering any of those brushes, make sure to get the discount. Silver is Tanner Steed 10, Rosemary is Tanner Steed Art. I've got the notes for that in the description. No need not to get a discount. And the leaves are just like the petals, where they're going to be crisp on the edge, and then they're going to recede and get darker and softer. Okay, so crisp edge, and then softer here. Yeah, let me know if you guys have any other questions. I'm liking the chat. Okay, I'm gonna step back again after this brush stroke. Always step back. It's got to read at a distance before it does in person. Wow, I'm liking that. That's cool. Okay, so why don't I show you guys how to do the bricks. Bricks are really fun. I make sure that these center brushstrokes are painted vertically. I do not want them catching glare like I want the petals, the light of the petals catching glare. That'll decrease the intensity of the illusion. And all of this applies to every other subject matter. Let's see, how do you know where to put hard, soft, lost, firm edges? And should you try for a certain percentage of each? It's not necessarily percentage, it's all based on observation. So when I'm looking at an object, I am able to tell, is it a sharp edge or a soft edge? And it all has to do with value contrast or color contrast between each point. If the contrast is more diffused and you can't really see a clear edge between, okay, the end of the petal and the beginning of the next, maybe they just merge together, right? So that would be a soft edge. An example would be if you look right here on the image, the flower, there is no edge between this petal right here and this one. Do you see that? They just kind of merge together. Whereas the edge between the light up above and the dark next to it, that is a sharp edge. So I would say that I'm not trying to make a certain percentage of sharp versus soft edges, but what you will find is that there are infinite versions, types of soft edges, whereas there is only one sharp edge. So the likelihood that it's going to be sharp is very, very low. These leaves the silhouette of them are very sharp as a result of them being a strong local color change, dark against light. But sometimes when the petals or the leaf curves up, you're actually seeing kind of a reflection off from the distant brick. You can look into the Fresnel effect. More has to do with reflections, but everything has a different refractive index. The silhouette of the flower is likely going to have a sharp edge. Due to its curvature. So if it's more like a cube, like this, that is going to have a sharper edge than if the transition is a cylinder. You see how this has 1, 2, 3 planes on my hand? If I go like this, it's 1 plane, 2 planes. So the more planes you have on the disco ball, the softer the edge quality is going to be. So the petal is more like this, light, and then a cliff. So it's going to have a sharper edge. But as we recede back into my arm, or a petal receding back this way, it's going to have a soft edge from plane to plane to plane. It's a gradation. Do you squint all the way through the painting? Yeah, it's a good idea to squint to check your work. Yeah, it's a good way to read if values are continuing to work. And edges aren't too sharp or too soft. But once I've determined value ranges and that stuff, I think I squint a little bit less. You squint a lot at the beginning. Sorry, I said I was going to work on the bricks. Then I started adding more leaves. Okay, so for the brick, I'm going to flip my brush upside down. Kind of unconventional. We're going to scratch in where the mortar is, okay? And make sure that they are equidistant and also varied in where the vertical cracks are. So I'm going to start with one right here. And no, I'm not copying the image exactly. I'm designing based on what we're seeing. So I do want this to be more or less perfectly horizontal. And I'm not sure if the camera can pick up on it completely. It looks like it can. I'm going to go vertical here. And if I don't like any one of these lines, guess what? All the paint is wet, benefit of Alla Prima. I can just scrub right over that and fix it. And I also have my mixtures. So now from here, I'm going to make a jump up. Here's my next row of bricks. Go all the way through. Go up here. There's another. And by no means is this the finishing touches for the bricks. This is just planning out the location for each one. Boom, boom, equidistant, equidistant. I could also see a compositional argument to make these not equal distant, make all of the bricks a little bit different sizes. That might be much more interesting. But I think we have enough variation in the leaves, location of the leaves, that we're going to be able to get away with equal sized bricks. Guy, and then get one right here, and yeah, maybe one right, nope, right here. So we have one whole brick there. Okay, I like that. So I would say that the mortar is more or less like a neutral pale white. And what is it surrounded by? It's surrounded by red brick, and it's next to green leaves. So white is a low contaminating local color. I'm imagining the light is coming down, it's hitting the green leaves, and it's going into the mortar, tinting them just a little bit green. By adding this green, the bricks are going to appear more red than they currently do. So I'm going to do a little bit of white. I'm actually going to mix it into the brick mixture. I'm at a point where I am not copying my references, but designing. I tried for the first time yesterday designing clouds, and to be honest, I realized I don't know what I'm doing. Well, I would recommend copying from photos, painting clouds over and over and over and over and over again, and then trying to not do all the complexities of painting to make up a cloud. Why don't you just draw one? Light or dark, design the shape, okay? Because it should work as a drawing, as a black and white image, even before it works with color. So figure that out first. And it takes a lot of practice. And most often, artists, myself, and my artist friends, they aren't purely working from imagination. They have access to a window, looking at a cloud and at least having a starting point. Or you can start with, a previous painter, a master painter, and say, oh my God, that work is even better. In fact, that might be an even better way to start, even before the photograph, copying a photograph. Copy a master painting and get to know how they simplified a scene. It is very useful. This is why I would advise taking classes with people, is seeing how an artist looks at a reference and simplifies it. Because it's our job to find just the essentials for the scene, right? but you will get better at it. Just keep going. Okay, so I'm getting white, my brick color, a little bit of this Cad Lemon, and I am just worried about the forward-facing plane. Maybe a little raw umber. This Cad Lemon, being lemon, it's a cool yellow, which is going to lean towards green, which is exactly what we want. I could even grab a little bit of this sap green. Totally fine. And remember, we're working alla prima, so when I scrub this in, it's going to be a little bit, it's going to be contaminated by the brick. Okay, I'm actually going to make a slightly darker version, so I have two options. See how I did that? Okay, so I'm going to go down here and scrub in as a test. So when we squint, right, squint at the image, you see how you can still see most of the mortar. That tells us that the mortar is a little bit lighter than the brick, okay? But it's not as light as the flour, so it's really important that we do not go too light. So I can scrub in along these lines. I should have said I was working in charcoal, which gives me even less excuses when I taking classes with you. Awesome, yeah, we'd love to have you, man. And I mean, don't underestimate what you're trying to do. Inventing anything, even with charcoal, very, very tough. You could even, if you find that the charcoal is a little too messy, do just graphite, right? When I say just, oh my god, this is so funny. So while I was at Stephen Bauman's place, someone said, you know, are you gonna just draw tonight? And if you know Stephen Bauman, like, that is his thing, right? It is a complete art, and I love drawing so much. I really appreciate drawing, but that's like a little pet peeve of his. So when I say just use pencil, you're using pencil. You're still creating art. Don't underestimate how difficult that actually is. Drawing is the hardest part of painting. Usually, if a painting isn't working, it's probably a drawing issue. 90% of the time, it's a drawing issue. Okay, so I'm putting in the mortar, but I haven't added the occlusion shadows or the downward facing planes of the brick. Oh, look at that. See? I moved that one up here. Not sure what that scratch is. It's a mistake. That's what it is. Oh, another thing I haven't brought up, which I should have put in my newsletter. I'm going to have to send out another newsletter in a couple days, so make sure you're subscribed to that. But in about a week, I'm going to have not only a new YouTube video, but a highly edited instructional video on painting a still life of a rug and flowers and a wall, and it's probably one of my personal favorites, one of my coolest paintings, definitely my best instructional video, and that'll be available on my website. And I want to make sure that it is very accessible to people, regardless of funds. So it's going to be very inexpensive for what it is. You know, if you go to like Streamline Art Publishing, that stuff, that's where a lot of people have posted their instructional videos, I'm going to have it available just on my website for probably a download, download or streaming, and it's going to be a fraction of the price. Usually those are like hundreds of dollars for those videos, and I think that's outrageous. My plan is to have a ton of videos for you guys to choose from. So if you just want the one-off instructional video, you can do that, especially if my atelier is full, which I definitely see on the horizon. Because there's only so much one-on-one individual instruction I can do. Because I also got to paint. I'm not a full-time teacher, I'm a full-time painter. But I want to help. Okay, so now I'm going to put in the little occlusion shadow, all the downward facing planes of the bricks. Yes, I'm mainly drawing in charcoal, but I plan on doing bark plate and graphite soon. Oh, awesome. Definitely do bark plates. Those are really cool, and I'd love to help you on that if you want. Dinner, definitely just cool. Okay, so on the top here, I'm going to put that there. Just going straight across. This is a sharp edge. Why? Because the plane is changing from this down and then into the mortar, right? So it's, if you're looking at the brick, it goes down and then into the wall and then into the border. Mortar. Another variation on this, if you're following along, is you can make these bricks a little more varied by poking or adding different local color changes. And again, if you're just joining, this is a painting going to be available in my floral painting sale, funding my honeymoon. You can get this painting for $1. Actually, that one already sold, but from $1 to $100, that's it. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So in the instructional video that will be coming out very soon, I go over many more techniques than just this because it's indirect, it's not alla prima. So you'll see me glazing and scumbling and painting thick to prepare for future glazes. The rug has a physical texture to it. I was painting like individual chunks of knots, like pointilles. Pointilles like Vermeer. Vermeer is one of my all-time favorites. I'm gonna back up. Very nice. I like it. I like it. Punch a hole in this leaf. Petal. Right here. Cool. So the benefit of painting wet into wet is as you lay down a brush stroke, it kind of just like dissolves into the surroundings. You can get these really nice diffused edges that are a little more tricky, but I have a trick for it, which is in the instructional video, to make that diffusion. would tell you now, but it's just too much to get into. It requires an actual demonstration of that. Not trying to be weird and secretive. Okay. This is a strange question, but do you ever get stressed or feel pressure when painting? Yeah. Are you kidding me? Painting is so hard. Here's the truth: is the better you get, the harder it gets. Okay. It gets easier because you know how to paint, but then your expectations keep going up and up and up and up, and let me tell you, it does not get easier. Coming up with a good idea is really, really tricky, and knowing exactly how to compose something. The hardest thing for me is being able to visualize everything that should happen for the best composition. So much of painting for me is actually sitting and studying the work and asking myself, like, what could change? I know how to change it. If I can visualize it, I can do it. But coming up with the best version of this painting, that's what's hard. That's what's hard. So yeah, sometimes I get stressed when you try something and you're like, God, that just isn't quite it. Or if you have like a deadline, if it's a commission, if there's a competition coming up or a show, deadlines are really good for me. Because if I don't have a deadline, I will just work and work and work infinitely. And the painting does improve, but sometimes the deadline forces you to trust your initial instinct and to just commit. And commitment can be very stressful. But it's worth it. That's how you can level up. A million starts are going to progress you much faster than one long painting. That's not to say that you shouldn't finish your paintings, but yeah, there's so many ingredients into creating a great painting. I mostly feel frustrated and embarrassed with my drawings and paintings. I know that feeling where you're like nervous to show other people. My advice for that would be trying to find a friend group online or in person where it's like a safe place to grow together. Someone who is of equal skill. It's really nice being able to grow with other people. There's like this amazing camaraderie that could come out of it. A little bit of competition, but it's healthy competition. And yeah, you grow together, and there's everyone has the fundamental belief, at least with my friends, my peers that I've grown with, that we're all in this together. We're all, trying to help each other be the best painters that we can be. Because guess what? You progress a lot faster with that mindset than trying to keep everything to yourself, and thinking that you're always right. I've been guilty of that in the past. There's a balance of having the insane ego of thinking that, oh my God, I can actually do this, right? That's super important. Confidence, not ego. But then also realizing, you know what? Maybe my friend does know something more than I do. And I know a little bit more than they do about this aspect of painting or whatever. So what I'm trying to say is find a community to grow with. That's going to help you get used to sharing your work and and developing. So with the online atelier, you're going to have access to a social media just for the class, where you have this exact mindset where everyone is posting their works in progress, only what you want to share, and people can comment. I will have options for critiques, but I would prefer if I was the only one actually critiquing, but people can leave comments and emojis and stuff. It's really, really cool. So that'll be live very, very soon. I'm testing out different softwares. So if you are interested in that, you can contact me through my website. And yeah, I should admit I don't put in enough practice. You gotta do practice. You should try do a drawing a day, okay? Even if it's 10 minutes, say, okay, I'm gonna draw for 5 minutes. Guess what happens? You start drawing, you're like, oh, I gotta keep going and going and going and going. And then you reach a point where you're like, huh, pretty good. Not worried about maybe not doing super well on this one, because guess what? I have tomorrow's drawing. And just do that day after day after day. And that practice totally adds up. I've shared about 8 artworks on IG. Well, that's great. And guess what? You can share on Instagram, or you don't have to. You really don't have to. You could even have like a private account that you only share with a couple people. It's totally cool. There's benefits to sharing, and there are disadvantages. Sharing can bring community to you, but it can also make you self-conscious about sharing, you know? I think for the most part people are... Okay, every artist who's actually competent has gone through all of the intense practice that it took. So I'd say the best artists are usually the most humble and the most willing to help. Very few artists that I've run into in the fine art world are jerks. Very few. And yeah, the art world's small. So unfortunately for the jerks, they it doesn't usually work out for them. Drama. My last portrait in charcoal took this comment thing. More than 2 weeks. Nice, dude, that is not long at all. You may have been saying that with like, oh my god, I can't believe it took 2 weeks. No, I've spent hundreds of hours on my artwork. Hundreds. And guess what? It's still not done. It's still on the easel, and the due date is this month on the 30th. Come to the studio to see it if you want. Yeah, I'll be posting a new painting that I've been working my butt off, and it's got hundreds of hours in it. So 2 weeks, that is not bad at all. Okay, here's a little trick back to painting this flower. To make these leaves a little bit more interesting, poke holes in them. Okay, a perfect leaf is boring. Perfect petal is boring. So what if there was an ant or some kind of beetle consuming the leaves? I want these to be slightly irregular shapes. And watching someone else lay down the paint is actually really helpful in understanding how to prevent contamination and, you know, all those other issues. I might put a dot right here. So I lay that down. Smack it. We were painting with Stephen Assail. We were in New York recently, and my buddy actually Ben took a workshop with him at the Seattle Prize, and I guess when he paints, they say, like, or he said that he flings paint. Oh my gosh. I guess there's literally paint flying across the room as he's working because he is constantly smacking. Let's see, I would love to visit, but I am in Newcastle, England. Oh, cool. That's awesome. Well, if you're ever in Denver, Colorado, stop by. We do offer workshops here, but I also do some international workshops. I know you probably heard earlier I will be going back to Rome next year. I also have a honestly very inexpensive for a workshop, a riverboat cruise through Amadeus Cruise Lines, where myself and a watercolor painter, Dan Marshall, we're going to be cruising from all along the Danube and painting in different cities all along the way. It's going to be so cool. If you want more info on that, let me know. I have 2 rooms left. And your food and drink are included in the price for the ticket. Pretty cool. Okay, like that. Is there some effects or things that can't be done alla prima? Absolutely. It is a limitation for certain effects. Working in multiple layers in oil will always have a different physical effect. You won't be able to see it on camera, okay? So what's really interesting is seeing pictures of paintings online and then running into them in person in a gallery or in a museum, and you're like, wait a minute, like this is so much less sophisticated than I thought. It's surprising how different the Instagram experience and, you know, seeing a painting from life actually is. Think Rembrandt. If you've seen a Rembrandt in person, like early Rembrandt, much more, many, multiple layers. Late Rembrandt is more alla prima. It's still indirect, but I find the early Rembrandt to be so much more distinct, and just the effects are more interesting to me. Okay. Thank you for all the questions. Yes, this looks pretty close to where the other one was when I started at the beginning of the video. It needs to be more green. Just a little spot of a high chroma green there. That. Cool. I'm gonna work on this upper guy a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna get some pure white. Put a few pointilles in. Okay, you can also take the back of your brush and poke into the mortar, and this creates kind of like a dappled texture. Make it a little more irregular. I think that's a good setup for the glaze. a little lighter up here. But it's really cool, like a Phantom Latour, from far away, it feels so real. You get close and you're like, oh, what? That is just paint. Like that's a fun experience. It's one of many ways to captivate the viewer. You know, you want it to work from way on the other side of the room, and it also needs to work up close. That's very, very important to me. For me, if it falls apart when you get close, it's just such a disappointment. So textural quality, paint handling, that can do it. That can be enough. Or it could be a fine rendering of tiny little objects. I think that can be so cool, like a Charles Bargue painting, or a Jerome, or an Alma Tadema, or Tadema. Alma Tadema. So on each one of those dark marks, there should be a sharp side and a soft side. It's not random, it's based on observation. How do you balance how much information to include in the painting? It's a good question. I would say there are a few philosophies to go by. You can just have a single focal point and render that to completion, and then everything outside of that focal point kind of diffuses and turns into chaos or whatever, dissolves. Beauty and dissolution. Richard Schmid comes to mind. He will often have one house that's perfectly rendered, and then the field just turns into brushstrokes and it's gone. That's one philosophy. Alma Tadema will render everything, but not to the extent of, like, I just saw the Ophelia painting by who was that? Not Waterhouse, Millet. I saw that. I really, really, really like that painting. But I think the one thing that I would, look at me, like a contemporary artist, you know, critiquing a master. If that were one of my students, I would say that it was overworked in the background. Overworking to me means maybe too many tiny little high contrasted details in the distance. There could have been significant simplification. A painterly textural effect could have done just as much as painting every single leaf on the tree in the back left. So it's a balance, and you go with your gut, you know. There's beauty in detail, in rendering. There's beauty in rendering, but not just to render for rendering's sake. A way that I'm simplifying this, that you may not realize, is the brick. I'm not going in and painting every single little crack in the brick. I can mimic it with, you know, brush strokes, or stabbing the brush, or like poking at it a little bit. This is, you know, that gives kind of a brick pattern. I can poke it with my finger. It's a simplification. It's the poetics of simplicity. Saying a lot with a little. Okay, so I think that one is done for this stage. I'm going to let this dry 100%, and then I'm going to come back in and glaze the other half, which is what I did on the other painting. I can hold that up, what I did at the beginning of the session. See how I've created a gradation. Oh, it's a little dark, sorry. Let me turn this up a little bit. So gradation from light to dark, a few cast shadows. You could be much more specific with, you know, some of these getting a little bit lighter or having gaps in there, and I might play around with that one, because look, see how much lighter I started on this and how much darker the bricks are in the background here? Two completely different effects, compositional effects. This is more about the darks against the light, and this is more about light against the dark, painting the exact same image but in two completely different ways. And what's cool about all these 100 sketches that I'm doing, it's not just going to be this image, right? I'm painting from life, I'm painting at the studio, they're all going to be individualized. But I'm going to take the best qualities in all of the pieces that I do and make some finished large work for shows, for galleries, and that kind of thing. So thank you. I'm going to end it here. Thank you so much for joining. I can switch to this camera. I really appreciate you being here. Thanks for commenting, talking to me, asking questions. You can continue commenting and I can respond to those. I read all of them. And check out my website and sign up for my newsletter for all the upcoming updates. I'm really excited. There's a lot going on. Okay? Well, thanks. I'll see you next time.